I'm your podcast host, Carista, and we are in 2023. Welcome to the new year. And for some of you, you're probably still on holidays. For others, you've probably gone back to the office and are thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And this episode, I want to cover some practical ways that when we go back into these office situations, um, for the most part, a lot of people actually feel unappreciated. And so many times it comes up that people feel unappreciated, that they don't feel respected. And in actual fact, I feel like so much of it is it's like years of this kind of mentality in office spaces where it's almost like, the parenting of yesteryear, where so many organizations want people to, turn up, do their job, and then just piss off. Like they don't actually want to, they don't actually really want to know what's going on for them. And I think the last couple of years that we've been through have really honed in on how, work is not a separate thing to people's situations, to what's going on for them. And we actually can't, we can no longer sort of have this disassociation between what work is and what the office is. Like this whole work-life balance thing is non-existent, and it hasn't been for a really long time. And I've spoken about it in previous episodes of the podcast, in that, we're so hyper-connected now that there's no way that you can kind of detach from work, particularly when so much of our work is easily accessible. Like it's so easily accessible where we are literally, just a few taps of a phone away from our inboxes, from what's going on, from our calendars, from all of these things. And yeah, like people get really disheartened in the workplace because they don't feel respected. So their boundaries aren't respected. And I did a whole episode on that. But also that they don't feel appreciated. And that's actually what I want to go through today, is that sense of appreciation. Now, people feel appreciated in different ways. And I think the interesting part of so much of, these kind of, uh, how do you want to put it? Like these dysfunctional workplaces, in that a lot of their relationships actually need to be repaired before you can be appreciating people meaningfully. Right. So there is a guy by the name of Dr. Gary Chapman who has written a book called The Five Love Languages. And for anyone who has done like, I know that counselors kind of like to use his teachings and that book as a really good way of reconnecting with your partner, of repairing those relationships that may have, for whatever reason, gone a little bit off course, and we're a bit frustrated with each other, so we're not talking to each other or whatever. But he's also co-written a book with a gentleman by the name of Paul White, and it is a book called The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. Now, it is based off his 5 love languages. And obviously, there's a bit of a nuance because, there's certain things that we do in relationships which we don't replicate in the office. No matter how many people think that that might be okay, it's also considered harassment. So let's not go there. But anyway, the 5 love languages and how these are translated into the workplace. So the 5 languages are, number 1 is words of affirmation. So that's like telling people that they've done a really good job in a meaningful way. So when managers or CEOs or whoever come out and say, oh, great job, blah, blah, blah. And it just make it really like, really kind of, I guess, basic, but also very broad. Like it's not very specific. So with words of affirmation, you actually want to be making your feedback to people really specific. Like, I really loved the way that you presented that report, or, you know, your energy was just palpable in this, in the presentation that you made. Like, I really loved that. You know, make things meaningful and in a context. So instead of, you know, turning up and being like, oh, great job, make that feedback really meaningful and make sure that people actually feel appreciated at a deeper level. I know that when we had lockdowns, and I was running a team remotely, and my team, if any of them are listening, I love you guys, but um, and I appreciate all of the support that you gave me during that time, because it was a rough ride. But we were running a grants program and it was incredibly busy. There was so much that needed to be done, and they were grants in relation to the lockdowns and in relation to the natural disasters that had happened in Australia. So there were things that really, really needed to be done, you know, urgently. And there was, yeah, huge amounts of work. But also people are grappling with the fact that they're homeschooling their kids and they're, you know, like they're not able to go into an office situation and all of these things that we've been through in these last couple of years. And so in order to help people feel like they were not just turning up to meetings just to have another meeting and go through their list and be like, oh yeah, I've done this and I've done that and this is where I'm up to and blah, blah, blah. I implemented this thing where it was your highlights, your lowlights, and any lights. So at the end of the meeting, once we'd gone through the business side of things, we went around the squares, like the Brady Bunch. Like your Zoom screen looks like the Brady Bunch. For those of you that are old enough to remember the Brady Bunch, it was kind of the opening scene where they had each person in the squares, which coincidentally, that's what Zoom looks like. But anyway, so we went around the squares and we went around to check in on everyone to be like, what were your highlights of the day or the week? What were your lowlights? And, you know, anything else that you wanted to share. And that could be, you know, I went for a walk and saw a beautiful flower, or I, you know, had a really nice weekend where I actually got to go somewhere that wasn't my house, because we were in all different parts of Australia. So different people were in different phases of, you know, these lockdown situations. And like the feedback that I got from many people in my team, as much as some of them like to take the piss out of me, which I'm totally here for as well, was that they really appreciated that, because it wasn't just all business. And this is what we have to also remember, is that people are human. They have lives outside of the office. They have things going on for them. And we need to make sure that we're checking in on them as a person, on what's really going on for them. And so, yeah, like these words of affirmation. And look, when it comes to the 5 love languages, I think I need to rewind a little bit and actually caveat it to say that everyone speaks a different language. So with the love languages, you know, you can go online and figure out how your love language is in a relationship sense, so intimate relationship sense, or even in a family dynamic. And when it comes to the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace, that might be slightly different. You know, you might feel appreciated in a different way to how you would maybe be in an intimate relationship. Usually they would be very similar, if not the same. But for some people, that might be slightly different as well, you know. And so it's up for you to explore that yourself. Like, how do you like to be appreciated? I think, you know, it's really easy for people to say, I don't feel appreciated and respected in my workplace. And that's fine. That's totally understandable. But it's delving deeper than that and being like, okay, well, how don't I feel appreciated? And what would it mean if I did feel appreciated, like what would that look like? How have I felt appreciated in the past, in different jobs, in different circumstances? Like, what makes me feel appreciated and feel like, I'm doing a job that's meaningful, that I really care about, and that, that really fulfills me and helps me to flourish as a person. Because at the end of the day, going to these jobs and turning up to these places, it is about feeling nourished and fulfilled. And when we're not, usually it's because we're not feeling appreciated or respected. And so it's about backtracking and going, okay, well, how can I feel appreciated and respected? Like, what does that look like for me? So the other thing is quality time. So I'll just go through the 5 of them first, and then we can like backtrack on them. Okay, so number 1 was words of affirmation. Number 2 is quality time. Number 3 is acts of service. Number 4 is tangible gifts. And number 5 is physical touch. Now, obviously, that's slightly different in the workplace situation. Otherwise, it is sexual harassment, and we're not here for that. So yeah, quality time. Maybe that's quality time with your manager. Maybe that's quality time with your colleagues. It's about spending the time with people and actually like making them feel like it matters for them. I knew that there were certain people in my team that needed that quality time. And so I would make a point of having a call and a check-in with them and going through anything that they needed, and actually connecting with them on a personal level, a bit more than just, here are the tasks, where are you up to, and are you meeting things, but actually checking in on them as the full person and being like, is there anything that you want to share? There's a safe space. Obviously, I can only help so much, but I'm here to listen. And I think having that quality time with people, no matter what that looks like, really matters, and that makes a difference to their life and to them as a person. Acts of service. Maybe there's someone who is overwhelmed with everything that they've got going on. There's a lot of work that they're doing. They're, they might be drowning, and you can kind of see that they're not coping, or maybe they've got a big event on and they are, flat strap, or depending on the context of the situation, like whatever that workplace looks like. Acts of service, just if you have the spare time to help someone with certain things. There was a colleague of mine and he was masterful at this. He would run these big diplomatic events, and they were amazing. They were fabulous connector events. He knew many people, and he really knew how to get a room together. But when it came to the logistics, he was like running around like a headless chook. He had no idea. And he used to use his charm to get a lot of people to kind of do all the logistical things for him, because it wasn't his bag, right? And hats off to him. And I helped him many times with different things. Yeah, like just having those acts of service, people feel like they're part of a team when people pitch in and help. And I think that goes beyond just people's love languages or their appreciation language, but it's just being a good team. It's being a good colleague. It's actually all pitching in, and it doesn't matter what level you are or whatever. But pitching in and getting things done, particularly when you can see people drowning. Like, let's not do that to people. Tangible gifts. Obviously, that is it's pretty obvious. But tangible gifts, like it doesn't even need to be a lot. It could just be like giving someone a chocolate, or leaving a chocolate on their desk, or yeah, like any sort of little appreciation gift. Maybe people drink wine, and dropping them a bottle of wine as a thank you, or seeing that someone's having a bad day and you bring them a coffee or something. Like, it doesn't need to be a big thing. And I know that in this world of remote work and kind of hybrid and different things like that, this doesn't preclude people from being able to do these sorts of things. You know, if anything, the last couple of years have shown how many companies have taken their services and offerings for products and everything online. So, you know, it might not be that you get to go and physically buy the coffee and drop it on their desk, but like maybe you can find out what their local cafe is that they like to go to and get them a voucher for that. Or even order them a nice little box of chocolates or some flowers or something like that that they get delivered to their home, or cupcakes even. You know, it doesn't need to be a very big thing, but just those little things of appreciation for some people really make that meaningful difference. And then number 5 is physical touch. Now, obviously, it goes without saying that, well, it should go without saying that, you know, there's obviously a lot of types of physical touch, which are definitely not appropriate in the workplace. And when I say physical touch, and what it means in this book by physical touch is that it is like giving someone a high five or a handshake or a pat on the back. You know, depending on how well you know people, like, and depending on the situations in the parts of the world that there are now, you know, maybe it is giving them a hug. Or it could be, you know, bumping elbows or bumping fists or whatever. I think that we do find different ways of being able to interact with people, and the way that the world has shifted in particularly around workplaces, right? We're seeing a lot more of these workplaces that are, you know, hybrid, asynchronistic, uh, you know, digital first. The companies that do it really well know how to bring their people on board. They offer them different things. They're checking in on them. They have people that are more concerned about their well-being than they are about, you know, HR kind of KPIs or whatever. You know, I think that there definitely needs to be a bit of a shift. And when we come back to it, when we get these things right, so when we're respecting people in a way that they feel respected and heard, and, you know, that is another thing, is like listening. And I think I'll actually go through a whole entire session on that in its own, because listening is very different to just listening and repeating back to people what you think that they've heard, kind of like, you know, the old way psychologist thing, and checking in to see that that's correct, but then not really taking on what they've actually heard, and dismissing it. You know, that's a whole other topic. But when it comes back down to it, you know, we need to repair these relationships first. There's no point in doing all of these things of appreciation and going through all these acts of appreciation if the very core relationship has not been nurtured. And for so many people, this is part of it. You need to nurture that relationship. You look at the friendships that you've had over the years. Why are they long-term friends? Because you've invested time and energy into it. You know, you can't produce great work without having people on board and feeling appreciated, working to a bigger mission than just being told what to do. You know, there's some great leadership books and all that sort of thing. I'm pretty sure it was in Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game. Not that I finished it, but I'm pretty sure in part of the beginning of that, he goes in to say how he kind of steps out, how so many of these different organizations actually show their bigger purpose, right? One of them was a guy who was collecting all the different seeds of different plants, so that if anything happened in the world, there was like a repository of seeds, so that, you know, the plants and the different fauna was not going to be, you know, like we've seen bushfires, we've seen all these things with natural disasters, so that those things could be replenished and, you know, replaced and nurtured. Anyway, during the time of the Second World War, I think it is, this kind of archive, if you will, was under attack. And the people that worked there cared about the cause so much that they would risk their lives to save the work that they were doing. Now, I'm not saying that every workplace is that extreme, but we definitely need to be looking at the larger picture here. And particularly now with so many options, like I spoke about it in the last episode. I got really saucy in the last episode. So if you're after some real sass, go back and check it out. Episode 10. But what we're seeing is that people have different options, right? And so if you're not giving them a larger purpose to be working there for, and if they're not feeling appreciated and respected, they will just go somewhere else. And I can't remember where I was reading it. There was a statistic, and it was the US, and it was saying that a lot of people coming into this new year are actually planning on leaving their jobs without any plan, without anything to go to, because they feel so strongly about not wanting to be where they are in that organization, in that workplace, because of the way that they're treated or whatever. But yeah, that's something to really consider. And so if you are one of those people in that situation who doesn't feel appreciated or respected, well, maybe you can shift it so that you're the one that's showing the appreciation to your colleagues, to teach those higher up than you how it's actually done. Because I know myself, I was in that situation. So this same team that I mentioned before, we were working incredibly hard, and it was coming up to, well, there was two things actually. So sorry if it's really loud. It's raining incessantly today. So if there's lots of background noise, I do apologize. And I've brought out a light today, which I never usually use, but I'm using that because it's so dark outside. It is freezing as well. Like, where did summer go? But anyway, so these two instances that I want to mention is, so one of them is actually at the end of, it was the end of 2020 actually. And I remember there was a, end of year thing, and they had some of the executive come and speak, and, to try and thank everyone for the year and everything like that. And what they did in that was, like, they basically said, yeah, we've had a crazy year. It's been really busy. So make sure you get a good break, because next year is going to be even busier. And I'm like, sure, that is really not instilling any confidence or actually making anyone feel appreciated. It's like, cool, you did a great job. You worked really fucking hard, and come back and work harder, because that's what we need next year. So what not to do, number one. And number two is going into January, we had Australia Day Awards, right? So for those of you who are familiar with the public service, there's a thing internally in all of the organizations where they generally have their own Australia Day Awards, right? So you nominate, it's all self-nominated within the organization. So they nominate a team or a couple of people or whatever. And, it's a bit of like a pat on the back, like, you did a great job. Thanks for all your efforts. And they do Australia Day Awards. Now, my team did not get recognized in these, but there was a select few people that were chosen in the management of this area, and they were the chosen few that got the Australia Day Awards, not the actual people that did, let's face it, so much of the work. And gave up their weekends and did after hours, and, you know, just they were the ones that really put in the hard yards, and they did not get appreciated. And there was a huge bit of backlash, and one of the people in management, you know, met with me, and they're like, I don't know what we do, like, how do we fix this? And I'm like, well, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. If you couldn't give everyone a certificate because you could only pick a couple of people, then pick no one. It's as simple as that. Stop excluding people just because it suits the numbers or whatever. Like, that is the biggest load of bullshit. It is, yeah. Anyway, it was just really poor form. Like, we need to make sure that when we're appreciating people, we're doing it meaningfully, not just to tick a box and be like, oh, look how good you guys are. And yeah, we gave you a certificate and here's a medal. Another friend of mine works in another organization, and they also had to scale up quite a lot for the responses for for the pandemic, basically. And in order to entice people to go and do the extra hours, her organization was giving people physical medals. Yeah, come and work 2 jobs for us and we're going to give you a medal. We won't pay you anymore. We won't give you time off in lieu or any of those things. We're going to give you a medal. Sure, because that's going to make people work harder. We need to be more considerate about how we're appreciating people, because when you're doing it in a way that suits you as the giver and not taking into consideration the receiver of these situations, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And actually, when these sorts of things are not meaningfully given, they're not received in a very good way. People are just like, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't actually care. I'd rather you not say anything. Don't give me a certificate. Don't give me a medal, because you don't really mean it. So it needs to be done in a meaningful way. And if we want to retain quality employees, and that's the thing, we're at a point in time where retaining quality employees matters so much. And so if you want to retain those quality employees, get really friggin' good at respecting who you've got in the room. Get really good at appreciating them. Repair the relationships that are not so good. Because if you don't do that, then let's face it, your HR area is going to get real busy, constantly recruiting. And you don't want to be that organization that people look at and they go, oh, they always seem to have jobs going. That's not always a good thing. And when people are looking for jobs, they are quite wised up to the fact that you're constantly recruiting for the same jobs. The question is, why are people not staying? And so I would implore all of you to take a look, take stock. Take a look at how you not only appreciate the people that you work with, but how you feel most appreciated and respected, and what that looks like for you, because it looks very different for different people. And, go get the book, Dr. Gary Chapman and Paul White, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. It's a good place to start. It's not the answer. There is no band-aid answer to these things. It all depends on your organization, on the people that you have there, on their situations. It's, as always, a very nuanced thing that you need to be looking at, instead of being like, here's the answer to everything. It doesn't work. Prozac has not stopped the amount of depression that's happening in the world. The Band-Aid approaches to things all crumble after a while. And that is what we're seeing in workplaces. After the last couple of years and the way that things have evolved, the way that things are going, the conversation is way past this bullshit about hybrid and working from home and all this sort of thing. Get past that bullshit. It's not about fights about getting in the office, because people are always going to, at the end of the day, needing to do what's best for them, whatever that looks like. And there's so many options out there that they'll just leave. And so they should. Why would you want to stay in a place where you're not respected or appreciated or even feel any ounce of value? So yeah, it's time to, if you're not appreciating your staff in the way that they feel appreciated, then figure out what that looks like for them, because everyone's different and it doesn't work. You know, a one size approach doesn't work for everyone. It needs to be meaningful, and recognition and appreciation is only effective if it's done in a meaningful way, and usually when it's done in a more personal way, right? Particularly for those people that are not so extroverted. They don't want to be the center of attention. I remember I was having a birthday and I was forced to have this like morning tea in the office. One thing that I just detest the most was having this morning tea in my honor of like a birthday. And I was like, I don't actually want to do this, but no one will listen to me. And so I had to go along with this morning tea. I mean, how many of those morning teas have you had to endure that you're like, I would rather not be here? It's food for thought. So while something may appear that, while some sort of activity or whatever works for you, and, you would probably like it, the question is, what about the receiver? So yeah, I hope that has helped you contemplate some things. This year on the podcast, there will be more interviews. I'm also available for speaking opportunities and to come on your podcast if you would like. Please reach out and let me know. You can like, follow, subscribe. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. All the links are in the show notes or the bio, depending on wherever you're watching this. And I hope that you have an incredible start to this 2023, no matter how that looks for you. Thanks for listening.